What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the 31 Days of Horror. I am your host, Mood616, and thank you once again for stopping in, guys. Yes, 31 Days of Horror, Volume 9, Day 20, coming at you live and direct. Alright, guys, so we're going to take it back to the 50s, specifically 1955, with the debut horror film from Roger Corman. Now, he had done a couple, like, Western films before this one, but this was his first ever into horror films. Which basically set up a trend of, like, for the next 10 years of just awesome stuff. I think Corman had a great, 10-year run of, doing, working with Vincent Price and doing the Edgar Allan Poe adaptations. Just so many good films in there. But this is the one that kind of started it for him in 1955, and that is called Day the World Ended. Yes, this was actually released by Scream Factory. I'm not really too sure why this one was never released in the Roger Corman DVD line that they had done years ago, but this one never made it to that line, and I believe this may have been actually an exclusive Blu-ray to the website, which I don't advocate for those because I think the exclusive to websites are fucking horse shit, because I think they should just be available for everybody to pick up. I don't understand why the entire Roger Corman line from Shout Factory was readily available for everybody except for a couple exclusives that they had done back in the day DVDs, and then they started putting these very limited and stuff. It makes literally no sense because this is no different than the other Corman films. So anyways, I digress. It just kind of gets me going about the exclusives. I can't stand them. But I did want to pick this one up because it was the only way to get it, and I'm a big Roger Corman fan, and I really like to have all of his films from this era and stuff like that. So, but yeah, Day the World Ended. So getting to the synopsis of this one, basically this one follows our two lead characters. He's like an military commander. Now he's like working as a scientist, living with his daughter and stuff like that. And basically what happens is there's like a nuclear bomb that like hits the world, and it's just straight up post-apocalyptic now. They're living in basically the fallout and stuff like that. And so he's trying to figure out, if it's safe to go out there and stuff like that. So once this happens, he's trying to get a hold of some people. He can't get a hold of anybody on the radio. Radio silence everywhere. So they're kind of figuring that, the whole world is kind of desolated and that's post-apocalyptic mayhem and stuff like that. To their amazement, a couple of people actually show up at this bunker that they've been living in because they were actually, the father was preparing for this nuclear fallout. And so anyways, these guys come to the house, or come to this bunker, and he, of course, is very reluctant to let them in because they only really had enough rations for like 3 people. It was, him, his daughter, and they have like a keeper, like a kind of like a housekeeper dude. Anyways, so we get 4 more people that show up here, and one thing leads to another. They're let in, and then they just basically have to try to survive this, the fallout from the nuclear warfare. So that's basically the synopsis of the film. Now, my thoughts on this one. I have really never heard a lot of people ever talk about this one. I'd never seen this one before. This is actually my first time watch, which I think I did mention, which is interesting because I've seen pretty much every Roger Corman film that he's ever done except for this one. To my amazement, it's actually a little bit better than I actually thought it was going to be, just given it was 1955. It was super low budget. If you know anything about Roger Corman, his films are always low budget. So but this one is interesting because it's dealing with the the effects of a nuclear fallout in a post-apocalyptic world and stuff like that. But there's a lot more going on because of course we have all these characters in this film, and I think Roger Corman, his idea was to like create a film that not only from the outside looking in, it's just about surviving this post-apocalyptic world, but there's always other dangers involved, and usually those dangers are other people, because let's face it, man, if you're living in this type of world where everything is desolate, everything's gone, people are going to do what they need to do to survive. So your biggest enemy might not even be the atmosphere outside, the contamination, the radiation and stuff like that. It might actually be the people that you're trying to survive with. They might be your biggest enemies. So he kind of includes that kind of narrative into the film, which I think is really cool. Of course, there is other things too. I mean, they're trying to figure out if it's safe to go outside and stuff, so they're living in this kind of bunker area. It turns out like they figure out that most of the contamination is a little bit higher up on this ledge, so if you go up as high as this ledge, that's where you could be contaminated and stuff like that. So they stay down in this bunker area. And of course there is, within the survivors, within this bunker, there is a lot of hostility and other things that are happening with these characters and stuff like that that kind of drive the plot forward and stuff. So, it's pretty interesting. I really like what he did with, the story with, the actual fallout. And they kind of go into this territory of exploring, like, how this nuclear blast created, like, a million years of, like, evolution and stuff like that. And it creates, like, these, these kind of monsters and stuff. Hence, of course, it's a monster movie, too. But it created this, and, like, how they resolve it and stuff was actually kind of unique and interesting. So, like, the movie itself can portray itself as being very, very dark. But I think the third act and stuff, like, the way everything's kind of explained actually works for the film. It really does kind of work for the film. Now, this one doesn't play out exactly how you think it would, going back to, like, the whole battles within the characters and stuff. So you basically have, his father and daughter, and actually I forgot to mention that she was engaged to somebody who obviously never made it back to the bunker or whatever, and he was just presumed dead and stuff like that. So that kind of plays into the whole thing. But, like, what happens with some of these characters that show up, so we have this one guy, he's like a geologist, he's a really good character, he really wants to help out, try to survive with these people and stuff. And then you have this guy named Tony and his girlfriend, and Tony's like a hood, he's like a gangster kind of thing, he's kind of a street thug, piece of shit, doesn't really care about anybody else. He's trying to hit on the daughter, Louise is her name, and then, of course, we have another guy that's actually involved in the bunker too, who has been contaminated. And now his character is really interesting because he's, like, half contaminated, he's got, like, all the burn marks and stuff like that are going on, but, like, during the night and during the day, like, sometimes he'll escape out of the bunker and he'll go up past the ledge and you'll see what's up there and stuff. So you kind of get these provisions and, like, you get an idea of really what's happening out there. And I really like the way the narrative progresses itself with, kind of developing and talking about the whole evolution and, like, what's out there. And, like, I think it's actually really well done. Now, a lot of people might think this movie is quite talky. Myself, I thought it was a little bit talky, but then I started thinking about, it's not just a monster movie. It's about the other dangers of living in a post-apocalyptic world, which can be what the nuclear blast has created, which monsters and other creatures and stuff like that. And, just the people themselves. And I really, truly believe that would actually be very true, because if you were living in a post-apocalyptic world, which obviously if a nuclear blast went, I don't expect us to see, like, crazy monsters like the one behind me. And I will say the monster actually does look like that in the film. It's kind of funny. But I do feel like our biggest enemy would be ourselves, because people are very selfish. People are always out for themselves, no matter how much they say they're going to help you survive and shit. At the end of the day, people are going to be out for themselves, and you're in danger. You're in fucking danger. You always have to watch your back. So it would be a scary situation to be in, because you're not sure if you're going to get sick and die from the radiation out there and the atmosphere. You've got the whole thing with people and stuff. So there's a lot of tensions. There's a lot of things to actually think about while you're watching this film. And if you can kind of put yourself into that situation, which obviously none of us can, because none of us have actually technically lived in a post-apocalyptic world, so to say. It's a frightening thought. It really is a frightening thought. To me, I think the whole bunker element of this film, the way it's shot, it feels very isolated. It feels very claustrophobic at times, to be honest. But it just feels like they shot this on like a level house, like a ground level house kind of thing. You don't really get to see that outside a whole lot. It's shot in close proximity. Like, there is scenes where Louise actually goes out in the water with her girlfriend there and stuff like that. So there is some scenes out by a pond and stuff. But most of the film is actually shot in this isolated bunker, which I feel like is just a house, or it's probably a set, actually, is what they probably built. And probably is, because there's a fight scene in there and everything shakes, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty low budget. So, but as for, like, the outside scenes, there's a little bit of atmosphere that's happening. You don't get to see a whole lot of creatures. In fact, our monster that you see behind me there probably shows up. Well, you get to see his hands a little bit, and then you probably get to see him maybe 15 minutes left in the film and stuff like that. The reveal of the monster is actually quite funny to me. I don't know why I laughed out loud. But it just kind of made me laugh. I don't know if it was like because I don't know if Roger Corman like set this thing up, but it's really funny because there's a picture of Louise and her fiance in this bunker, and it's fucking Roger Corman. It's totally a picture of Roger Corman and her. And it just made me laugh. And I was just like, shit, dude, is he just making a total joke? But yeah, anyways, that kind of made me laugh towards the end of the film. So, but yeah, the day the world ended, like I said, the way characters are eliminated in this film is not exactly how you think it would go down. It kind of shocked me a little bit. I was kind of taken back by that, but it plays into the whole, I think our biggest fear would be man kind of thing, right? So, yeah, all in all, I had fun with this. I don't think it's Roger Corman's best work. I mean, to be honest, my favorite Roger Corman work is pretty much everything he did with Vincent Price. And, you know, that whole Poe Price adaptations and stuff like that. The Moscow Rag Death is like one of my all-time personal favorite films anyways. Like, that movie just is such full of allegories and metaphors, and it's just crazy. Like, even the colors all significant, like it's just everything means something in that film. It's crazy. Really good stuff. But this is a good start. I'm going to give this one about a 6.5 out of 10. It's nothing spectacular. It might be a little bit too talky for people, but again, it keeps you intrigued, and you know, there's a little bit of element of surprise there too, which I think is always compelling in these old 50s films, but it just fits right into the mold. In the mid 50s, there was a lot of films dealing with like atomic warfare and the fallout of, you know, the atomic wars and nuclear blasts and stuff like that, and radiation and monsters and shit like that. So this is definitely a product of its time. I really like these films. I've always been a big fan of 50s, like sci-fi horror films and, you know, the atomic fallout films and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's not the best one I've ever seen, but it's actually not that bad. So, yeah, if you can find it, give it a watch. Day the World Ended from 1955, Roger Corman. All right, guys, so that's going to conclude day 20 here. Stay tuned for day 21 tomorrow. Actually, I do remember what I'm doing, and it's actually another first-time watch. I shouldn't say actually. I only did a couple rewatches in this whole 31 days. But it's a film I've been actually wanting to see for years. And Synapse actually put it out, so if that helps. But anyways, that's going to conclude day 20. I'll check you guys tomorrow on day 20, and as per usual,